They say Whispering Woods is a place you don't find, it finds you. That's what the old man told me the first time I mentioned it in the local bar, a week after I inherited my grandfather's belongings. I was going through his things, preparing to sell the house, when I discovered a weathered, hand-drawn map tucked inside a copy of the mysterious disappearances of the Pacific Northwest. The red X's marked throughout the forest immediately caught my eye. I'd never heard him mention these woods. He'd always warned me against curiosity that walks too far. Of course, I didn't listen. Whispering Woods sits in the northern corner of Oregon, about 2 hours from any real town. No signs, no trail markers, no rangers. Just the forest, thick and dense and too quiet. Over the past 100 years, dozens of people had gone missing inside. No remains. No belongings. Just vanished. And now, with a strange map in hand and 1,000 questions in mind, I found myself drawn to it. Just like they were. Harold Finch, 1927, last seen on a church retreat. Clara Evans, 1978, amateur nature photographer. Daniel Lee, 2019, high school senior, aspiring geologist. The stories span nearly a century. No connections in profession, gender, or age. Only one constant, they all disappeared within the confines of Whispering Woods. My grandfather's notes were sparse but methodical. Each X corresponded with a name, a date, a one-line comment. Went looking for stars. Didn't come back from the water. Heard voices. The further I read, the more unsettled I became. There was a pattern, subtle but real. All vanishings occurred in late September, around the autumn equinox. That's when I decided I had to go. Some say there's a magnetic field in the forest that distorts compasses and GPS. Others speak of a time anomaly, a loop or rip in reality that traps people in some other realm. The most chilling theory, though, is the one rooted in folklore. The forest itself is alive. According to native legends, the land was once sacred. A spirit guarded it, whispering to those who entered. If the visitor listened too long, the spirit would consume their soul, not out of malice, but hunger. The Echoing One, they called it. I interviewed locals before I went. One woman told me she'd lost her brother in those woods. He came back, she said, but he wasn't him. He looked the same. Talked the same. But his eyes were empty, like glass. I wasn't sure what to believe, but I packed a compass, a GPS, and the map. I set off on September 20th, just as the leaves began to turn. I followed my grandfather's map to the first red X. It was just a moss-covered stone circle, but the silence around it was unnatural. No birds. No wind. Just the whispering. At first I thought it was in my head. Then I started recording with a field mic. When I played it back that night in my tent, I heard it clearly, "You shouldn't be here." I pressed on. Day after day, I found the other excess, abandoned campsites, torn clothes, a rusted compass nailed to a tree. My drone picked up movement that wasn't there when I looked. My GPS kept resetting. And on the 5th day, I found a fresh journal in the clearing with the final X. The name inside was Daniel Lee. The last entry read, "She said I can stay if I want. But I'll forget. I think I already have." That night, I dreamed of a woman made of bark and bone, her eyes hollow, her voice soft as a breeze. She asked me to stay. I nearly said yes. I left the next morning. I don't remember the way out, only that I woke up in my car, parked at the edge of the woods. My recorder was blank. My grandfather's map was gone. But I remembered the whisper, "Curiosity walks too far." Whatever's in Whispering Woods isn't evil. It's hungry. Curious, like us. And when you listen too closely, it listens back. I still hear it sometimes, at night, when the wind moves through the trees. It began with static. I host a podcast, Shadows in the Pines. It's not wildly popular, but I have a loyal audience of listeners who love creepy, unsolved cases. One day, I got an anonymous email. No subject. Just coordinates, a date, and a short message, "Play the signal." Attached was an audio file labeled only with numbers. When I hit play, my speakers crackled, burst into static, and then emitted a chilling, rhythmic tone. The coordinates pointed to Whispering Woods. I had heard of it before, barely. A place swallowed in fog and silence. A favorite for urban legends, but almost deliberately scrubbed from official records. I began digging. Missing persons reports. Message boards. Private forums. What I found chilled me. Year after year, hikers, researchers, and even entire families had gone into the woods and vanished. Just gone. Most disappearances were in late September. Always during the last week. I gathered my gear, audio recorder, signal scrambler, and drone, and drove out. I planned to camp for 3 days. Just enough to gather sound and video data. Just enough to not be noticed. On the first day, my equipment began failing. The drone's GPS went haywire. My recorder picked up faint background noise I hadn't heard while standing there, almost like a child humming. My phone had no service. Still, I pressed deeper. On the second day, I found the remnants of a fire pit and a journal. It belonged to a woman named Marie Benton. A botanist, from what I could gather. Her last entry was nearly a decade ago. The singing grows louder when I'm alone. I thought it was birds. It's not birds. That night, I stayed awake listening. Around 2 a.m., my radio started picking up a frequency. Nothing on the display, but I heard something. A voice. Whispering, "Do you hear me now?" I froze. I hadn't touched the tuner. The voice continued. Faint. Almost pleading. It was interlaced with static, but it said things like "Don't forget me" and "She's watching." By morning, the radio was dead. On the third day, I hiked deeper, against my better judgment. I passed a tree that had a deep gash carved into it, shaped like an eye. Beneath it, a pile of cracked headphones and radio parts, like offerings. I set up my parabolic MIC and started scanning. The sound it picked up was not natural. A frequency that shouldn't have existed. A tonal pattern that felt deliberate. When I analyzed the waveform later, it looked eerily like a face. Open mouth. Wide eyes. I turned back. I shouldn't have stayed the third night. Sleep was impossible. The forest was too quiet, the static too loud inside my ears. Around 4 a.m., I saw a figure outside my tent. I swear it looked like me, only slightly off. Taller. Grinning. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The figure cocked its head and whispered something. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I packed everything, but my drone was gone. The parabolic MIC, fried. I got in my car and drove, not stopping until I reached a gas station 3 hours away. When I checked my audio files, most were corrupted. Except one. That file, the same one from the anonymous email, was still there. Except this time, the voice in the static said something different. "Now you hear us." I don't record anymore. I shut the podcast down. But sometimes, my radio turns on by itself at night, playing that same pattern of static and whispering voices. And I swear, it's getting clearer. It started with a survey. I was a geology graduate student at a university known more for its football team than its research funding. But we had one asset. Dr. Timothy Vance, a reclusive but brilliant geophysicist who had received a rare grant to map subsurface anomalies in the Cascade Range. I was lucky enough to get picked for his field team. The target area? Whispering Woods. It wasn't labeled as such on the official maps, of course. It was just a section of untouched forest deep in Oregon, land that locals avoided and scientists ignored. But when we reviewed the satellite gravimetric data, something was clearly off. There was a massive void underground, a pocket or chasm, maybe, with no visible surface entry point. Dr. Vance called it an unclassified geologic curiosity. I called it weird. We set up camp a mile from the center of the anomaly. Our team was small, Dr. Vance, myself, and 2 assistants, Carla, a seismologist, and Felix, a grad student who specialized in magnetotellurics. We brought ground-penetrating radar, a seismic source hammer, and resistivity probes. Standard fieldwork. Nothing mystical. The first night was uneventful, aside from a strange quiet. No wind. No insects. No birds. Just trees, still as statues. I chalked it up to nerves. It was only on the second day, when Carla began noticing interference in the seismic readings, that things started to shift. "There's a resonance under the bedrock," she said, frowning. "Almost harmonic. Like a frequency?" I asked. She nodded. "Something is reflecting the seismic waves in a pattern that doesn't match any mineral structure." That night, while analyzing data in the tent, Felix played a processed audio file from the ground readings. It was a low, humming tone, impossibly deep. I felt it more than heard it. Like the earth was exhaling beneath us. "Does it loop?" I asked. He shook his head. "No. That's what's weird. It's not repeating. It's changing. Like it's responding." That was when we should have left. The third day brought discovery. We located a depression in the terrain that didn't match topographic maps. The moss seemed thinner there. Carla probed it with a seismic rod and found something dense, metallic, buried just below the surface. We dug. We found a hatch. It was iron, ancient-looking, etched with symbols none of us recognized. Circular spirals. Eyes. Concentric rings like tree bark. It was sealed tight, no visible hinges. Vance was ecstatic. "Subterranean chamber," he whispered, half to himself. "We might be looking at a paleostructure. Pre-human, even." That night, I dreamed of roots, massive, gnarled things, writhing through the soil. A heartbeat echoed through the trees. I awoke to Carla screaming. She said she'd seen something moving just beyond the tree line. A tall, thin figure, black as obsidian, with no face. Only a round opening where its head should have been, humming with the same resonance from the seismic files. We blamed stress. We were scientists. On the fourth day, the hatch was open. We didn't hear it move. No sound. No sign of tampering. It was just open. A dark tunnel descended below, carved from stone, but too smooth. Too precise. The air that came out wasn't foul, but electric, charged, like ozone before lightning. Dr. Vance insisted we go down. I stayed at the surface. Carla and Felix went with him, against their better judgment. I monitored their progress through a radio feed. At first, all I heard was breathing and boots on stone. Then the tone returned, the low hum. It grew louder the deeper they went. Carla's voice was shaky. "It's not a tunnel. It's a spiral. It goes down and down and down." Then Vance said something I'll never forget. "We're not the first. There are carvings. People. Kneeling. Offering bones." I lost contact 5 minutes later. I waited for 2 hours. Then 3. I called out. Lowered a flashlight on a rope. Nothing. Finally, I descended. I only made it 100 feet. The spiral walls pulsed, almost like a throat. The carvings were real, human forms, distorted, their faces turned upward in silent prayer or terror. The air shimmered. And beneath the hum, I heard a voice. Not in my ears. In my mind. "We are beneath the root. We are the seed." I turned back. I don't remember climbing out. Only that I woke up hours later at base camp, alone. The hatch had sealed. I radioed for help. A chopper came the next morning. No trace of the hatch. No equipment. No sign of Carla, Felix, or Dr. Vance. Just an undisturbed forest floor. I tried to go back. Maps shifted. GPS failed. I could never find the site again. Since then, I've had dreams. Of spirals. Of things growing beneath the world. I keep drawing the same symbol, an eye within rings, surrounded by roots. And the hum? I still hear it. In concrete. In cities. In the silence between thoughts. The God below sleeps beneath whispering woods. But it is waking. And we've already knelt.